Hey everyone, MeltingMan234 here, and welcome to another episode of Forgotten Media, where I dig up some stuff you may or may not have heard of. You know, I always wonder what happens when I get a lot of requests on a subject for Forgotten Media. Makes me wonder if it really is forgotten, if a lot of people keep asking me to do it. Well, I guess I'll find out when I get to cover on one of my most requested subjects known as Whatever Happened to Robot Jones. This was an American television series that was created by Greg Miller and was shown on Cartoon Network on August 25th, 2000 as a pilot episode being featured on the Voice Your Choice Marathon, and it ended up on second place. Then eventually it began its series run on June 25th, 2002. It's one of those shows I remembered watching back in the old days of Cartoon Network next to Sheep in the Big City and Evil Con Carne. The story is mainly about a teenage robot named Robot Jones, who attends Polynew Middle School in this strange 1980s setting to examine data on the human life. Attending a school full of humans is pretty difficult for a robot, as he is more intelligent with his mind and cybernetics, but everybody treats him like a freak because, robots are evil, brah! Even though Robot Jones is the outcast of the school, he still manages to make some friends and make some enemies along the way. The origin of the show was originally going to be a pirate show, but back in the day, Cartoon Network had some kind of law for no pirate shows because, pirates are evil, brah! So Greg tinkered around with some ideas for a while, which led him into creating Robot Jones. For the cast of the series, we have Robot Jones, a robot who begins his daily mission to experiment on the human life. He is an intelligent mech who tries to fit in with the human population, but he still has a few kinks in his system here and there, as his mom unit calls him a prototype. But one thing's for sure, is that if you piss him off, he really goes berserk. His voice is quite interesting, as most people say that he is voiced by a Macintosh Jr., a computer speaking tool used for some of the old Macintosh models, and some of them still exist with today's models. But according to Greg Miller, the voice of Robot Jones was actually voiced by an old Word 98 program, which also has a computer speaking tool. His parents, called Mom Unit and Dad Unit, are his robotic parents that usually inform him on his missions on studying human life. Mom Unit is more of the energy tang, as she literally has gas pumps for hands, while Dad Unit is more of the motorized robot who constantly keeps saying things 3 times. Now the interesting thing about Dad Unit is that he is voiced by a Macintosh Ralph. These kind of robotic voices have been used in other medias, but as for Ralph in the current years, he's probably more recognizable as the voice of Otto in Disney and Pixar's WALL-E. Timothy Morton, the tall kid in the school nicknamed Socks, 'cause I guess he has long socks or something. Charles Cubinacle, or whatever you pronounce that weird name, the video game nerd nicknamed QB for one of his special talents in an episode, and Mitch Freeman Davis, the laid-back character who always goes around wearing headphones and somehow manages to see perfectly with all of that hair in his face. There's Shannon Westenberg, some girl who suffers from orthodontic overkill, and Robot Jones has a crush on her because of her metallic parts, even when she can be a bit of a jerk at times. There's the Augment twins, Lenny and Denny, the evil dweebs who live in the air ducts of the school, and constantly plan on taking Jones' superintelligence, or planning to overtake the school. It's pretty odd that their lair is within the air ducts in the school. Makes me wonder how do they survive from being sliced to pieces by the fans inside and such. The school also has some characters like Mr. Mick, the math teacher with a very strange name, and Principal Madman, known for his cruelty and hatred to robots, and his strict attitude by giving students detention for a ridiculously long period of time. This character is very weird. It's like if Adolf Hitler decided to gain 10 pounds of fat and become a principal. But if you look past the weird design, he's a fun character for his strict personality. The episodes usually had Robot Jones examine the life of school and human activities, and conclude them in his datalog entry files at the end of each episode. One episode has him observing PE class, one episode has him learning about growth spurts, and another episode has him learning about competition with the Wonder Cube, a parody of the Rubik's Cube. The art style is very similar to Schoolhouse Rock for its odd style, and it happens to be the last show on Cartoon Network to use the traditional cell animation process. The animation was done by Rough Draft Studios, known for making various films and animated series over the years. The music is a nice clash between rock music and 8-bit music, giving it interesting nostalgia. Most of the gags and humor in the show were more intended for older audiences, especially when the gym teacher is portrayed as a gay stereotype. The setting in the show is like going back to the 1980s, like how the episode Cube Wars is more of a spoof of the Rubik's Cube's popularity. There are some pretty weird stuff in the show, like how in one episode is a music video about a naked guy and a dog running around the world, or how a kid gets attacked by birds and then gets dragged off to who knows where. You don't see that every day. I find this series very similar to Sheep in the Big City, obscure cartoons on Cartoon Network that had gags that older audiences would enjoy and laugh at, while younger audiences would have no idea what they're saying. I think the one reason that some people complained about Robot Jones was his new voice in Season 2. Some people might think that the company Macintosh sued Cartoon Network for using the Macintosh programs, back when people thought Jones was voiced by a Macintosh, but it turns out the real reason behind the voice change was that the executives were freaked out on how weird Robot Jones sounded in Season 1, so they sent Greg to find a new voice for the character in Season 2 that sounded more quote-unquote Hollywood. So they found a random kid by the name of Bobby Black, and he became the new voice for Robot Jones. But then some reason they went back and re-aired Season 1 with all the episodes redubbed with the new voice. I liked his robot voice, cause it was something different that I never heard of before back then, and he was actually voiced by a robot. But now he was voiced by a kid who's been given a robotic tone to his voice. The series was short-lived, as it lasted for over a year. I guess it just wasn't taking any notice, or that it was too good to last, and there were even some canceled episodes that were in the works. One episode talked about the history of robotics, probably giving Robot Jones some backstory on how he was made. One episode would have Jones on a talk show, and the third one remains a mystery. With only 13 episodes and 2 seasons total, Robot Jones was cancelled on November 14th, 2003, and was never seen again. Over the years, I guess the show sparked a bit of a cult following, because I've seen a lot of fan art of this guy, and probably one of the reasons why I get a lot of requests on it for Forgotten Media. Robot Jones would make very few cameos after this, like making a cameo in an episode of Dexter's Laboratory, even though you can barely see him because he's blended into the background. And during Cartoon Network's 20th anniversary specials, Robot Jones makes a cameo appearance along with a lot of other Cartoon Network shows over the years. It's time for an update, because while I'm in the process of re-editing this episode, I might as well talk about Robot Jones's other cameo appearance that happened years later. So, in the year 2018, the show OKKO featured an episode called Crossover Nexus. It was mostly an episode focusing on a crossover between characters from OKKO, Steven Universe, Ben 10, and Teen Titans Go. But the fun thing about this episode is that it features tons and tons of cameos of characters from other Cartoon Network shows over the years. From the more famous ones like Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Lab, and Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, to the more obscure ones like Sheep in the Big City, Moxie Show, and obviously Robot Jones. Surprisingly, he actually has some bit of dialogue in this episode, and wouldn't you know it, he's voiced by that old program that they used in the original episodes of Robot Jones. Yeah, and not just some random kid with a voice filter. I did watch the episode while I was re-editing this episode, and it was nice. I was mostly geeking out at some of the more obscure references they threw in. But even to this day, it's still sad that Robot Jones still hasn't gotten any kind of official home media or digital release, so good luck in trying to find any episodes on the internet, let alone finding episodes with the original voice of Robot Jones. But it still leaves us the unanswered question, whatever happened to Robot Jones? Well, I'll tell you what happened. He ended up in the rejected world, a place full of characters who were forgotten and scrapped and never heard of again. Well, at least that's my theory anyway. Or maybe he's in an alternate universe in the 1990s, gathering robot troops in the war against the humans. Well, I think that's probably something Greg Miller would say. Well, your guess is as good as mine as to whatever happened to this little guy. But either way, Robot Jones is a nostalgic TV show back in the old days of Cartoon Network. Its characters and settings are what makes it unique. In closing, whatever happened to Robot Jones is an underrated show that deserves to have all the episodes ported onto a DVD box set, restored and uncut, or at least have an option to watch the episodes with Robot Jones's original voice or redubbed voice. Well, that wraps up another episode of Forgotten Media. Tune in next time where I'll be doing another installment of Mixed Batch. So until then, this is Melting Man 234 signing out.